Hello guys, this is your friend Naruto Addict 2.0 and we are back with a new fanfic. What if Naruto became the avatar of darkness? Naruto times Hinata times Sakura times Ino times Anko times Kurenai times Tsunade times Shizune times Tamari times Tenten times Mei times Konan times Karen times Yugito times Samui times black-haired mystery girl times night times death times retribution, bashing part 1. And if you enjoy this fanfic then please press the like button and subscribe to my channel for more fanfic like this. And now let's start the fanfic. Was rigid and unmoving, but soon the shadows peeled off with them forming dead bats as they hit the floor, revealing the transformation that had taken place. Naruto's features HHAD changed drastically. His hair was a lighter shade of yellow, almost to the point of being white. The whisker marks were no more while the nails on Naruto's finger were slightly longer but not too long. But the real change was the two objects jutting out of Naruto's mouth. Tsunami was alerted to the sounds of Naruto's screams as well as Kakashi. Both of them ran into the room to find Naruto now sitting on the bed while looking at his body while the dead bats littered the ground. "Naruto, are you okay?" asked Kakashi, making the boy look to his sensei. His eyes were no longer blue with life, but a dangerous scarlet red with a slit in them. "I'm feeling fine, why do you ask?" asked Naruto, getting up. But when the sun hit him, they watched as Naruto's skin began to burn away. Flakes of skin peeled off his body as Naruto cried in pain and shot away from the window. This only surprised them more as Naruto moved with incredible speed. So fast that it looked like he teleported. But for Naruto, it seemed like a simple move. Looking to the two in the room, Naruto raised an eyebrow as his skin repaired itself. "What?" he asked. "How did you do that? You moved so fast," stated Tsunami. "I just moved away from the window." "What of it?" asked Naruto. "Naruto, are you sure you're okay? Is the Kyuubi taking over?" asked Kakashi. "No, she's not," barked Naruto. "You may feel fine after some dinner. Soup is for dinner," said Tsunami, heading off. "Thanks. I'm so hungry I could eat anything," said Naruto as his stomach growled. Nosferatu. Making his way into the bathroom of the house, Naruto looked into the mirror and looked at his features. What he saw was beyond him. His hair was more different, his eyes were a dangerous color of red while his canines were enlarged to the point of slightly sticking out. His nails were now claws and his skin was as pale as the snow. What was this? But as he ran the water, a rather sweet smell invaded his senses. It smelt like roses and chocolate. It smelt so delicious, so pure. Closing the tap and following his nose, he found Tsunami standing there while her finger was in her mouth as blood dropped from the wound while a small bit of blood was seen on the knife. Naruto's eyes were locked on the knife, as Tsunami smiled to Naruto. "I'm okay," she said. "No problem," said Naruto as he looked on. This couldn't be where that smell was coming from, right? Thinking it was nothing, Naruto headed back up to wash up for dinner, but his mind soon drifted back to the blood on the knife. It seemed so alluring, tickling his senses as much as possible while the smell drove him wild. His stomach soon growled as he groaned. "Man, I'm so hungry," said Naruto, placing his hands on his gut. When dinner finally rolled around, everyone sat at the table as Tsunami dished up for them. Naruto noticed that Tsunami had a plaster on her finger from the wound she had. When the food was laid before Naruto, he gave a helping hand of the delicious scent. But for some reason, when the smells flooded his nostrils, he felt like he wanted to throw up then and there. I smelled horrendous, like someone mixed in some old sweaty socks and served it to him. He could even feel it coming up. Keeping it down, he scooped up some soup on his spoon and shoved it in his mouth. That completely threw him for me as he excused himself from the table and sprinted to the toilet. Emptying out his stomach of the horrendous taste, Naruto gained a face of confusion. Everyone else seemed to enjoy the food and ask for seconds, while he couldn't even manage a single spoon of the stuff. Was he still feeling ill? No, he couldn't be. He felt fine. Apart from the feeling of having his skin burn and him in pain from being in the sun, he was feeling like $1,000,000. So what was wrong with him? Making his way to the table and excusing himself, Naruto made his way out the house and into a forest area where he could be alone for a bit. And hopefully think as to what was wrong with him. Stopping once he was deep in the forest, Naruto dropped to his knees and began to cough. Looking to his hand, he found a few bits of carrot and spinach on his hand. Just looking at it drove him to sickness. And once more his stomach growled rather loudly. Man, I'm so hungry. But for what? He asked to no one. But as he began to think, a massive surge of pain hit his body. His gut soon began to glow rather brightly as he gritted his teeth from the pain he was experiencing. He watched as a pure orange orb floated out from his gut and form a woman who looked to be in her late 20s. Black flowing hair flowed down her head and stopped at her shoulders. 2 black fox ears on her head and 9 white tails were seen behind her. Her outfit looked to be that of a kimono but was kept in a rather revealing look. And man did it reveal a lot. Perfect, gravity-defying DD cup breasts and long shapely legs that seemed to go on forever. Her face was heart-shaped and on her lips was some red lipstick. Who are you? Asked Naruto. I'm rather hurt. I'm Kyuubi. She stated. Wait, is that really you? Asked Naruto with Kyuubi nodding. This is my human form. How I'm outside like this must be because of your new power rejecting me. So it pushed me out. But you may call me Ahri. Purred Kyuubi taking in the man before her. Do you know what's wrong with me? Why I can't eat that food? Asked Naruto sitting on his haunches. I think I do know what's wrong with you. From the stories I've learned, from the past and all. It seems you've become a beast of the night. Nosferatu. Or vampire. Replied Ahri with Naruto raising an eyebrow. How is that possible? I can't be a vampire. Stated Naruto with Ahri grabbing some bark and cutting her wrist with it. Naruto's eyes locked with the red liquid flowing from Ahri's wrist. And once again, he smelt the delicious scent. But instead of it smelling like roses and chocolate, it smelled more like lavender. The smell was all too intoxicating for Naruto to handle as his eyes soon began to glow. Ahri noticed this and used her healing to repair the wound. Instantly, Naruto returned to normal but his hunger still remained as she heard his stomach growl. This definitely proves it. You're a vampire. And what is happening with you is because you hunger for blood, stated Ahri. I'm so hungry, said Naruto gritting his teeth. Ahri merely smiled as she looked to the blood-starved vampire. She used the bark shard and cut her wrist once more and once more. Naruto's eyes began to glow red as he licked his lips inconscientiously. I'll make a contract with you. Right here, right now, said Ahri as Naruto looked to her. For my blood, you must be willing to subjugate yourself and become mine. I know that what I'm saying may come as a shock, but I need a mate. Demons tend to mate for life, and I have yet to find my mate. And with mating season coming around the corner for me doesn't help much. Become my mate, and I will give you my blood. Naruto thought it over. He was so hungry and ever since Ahri cut herself with that bark, Naruto felt the urge to feed. Something about that red liquid was all too much for him to handle. Here was Ahri, the 9-tailed Biju offering him her blood, but only if he was willing to become her mate. It seemed rather strange for a contract. But right now, the only thing on his mind was to feed. I accept the contract, said Naruto with Ahri smiling as she walked over to him with a sway in her hips. Kneeling down she held out her wrist for Naruto. Then drink my love. Drink and fulfill our contract, she said. Naruto took Ahri's hand and sunk his teeth into her skin. Ahri winced in pain at the feeling of having Naruto's enlarged canines enter her flesh. Naruto then began to suck. The blood that entered his mouth and flowed past his throat was so enriching it was amazing. His senses felt so alive as he felt his hunger become no more. Grabbing her wrist more tighter than ever as he soon looked to be getting rather greedy. Ahri soon pulled her wrist away from the young vampire and healed the wound while Naruto stared on in ecstasy as he savored the taste of Ahri's blood. A small trail of Ahri's blood flowed down the side of his mouth but that was no longer seen as Naruto licked the trail. His eyes changing from a dangerous red back to a warm blue. Now it's time for you to make good on the other part of our deal, said Ahri as she took off her clothes to reveal her amazing body to the vampire. A deal is a deal after all, said Naruto as he too got undressed with Ahri pouncing on Naruto. Throughout the forest, moans and screams of pleasure echoed through the area as Naruto and Ahri explored one another's bodies rather passionately. After a few hours, the two new lovers put their clothes back on as the sun slowly crept over the horizon. Naruto watched as the sun's rays hit him. Scrunching his eyes shut as he expected the sun to burn him like it did in the house from the window, Naruto found that the sun wasn't even hurting him. Not one bit. Opening one eye, then the other, Naruto found that the sun was not even hurting him one bit. Though his blood boiled in the sun, which was rather painful in its own way, it was at least manageable. Looking to Ahri, who put on the last bits of her clothing on, she looked to Naruto. I don't know what is going on here. All I know is that you're a vampire. Maybe if you track down the one who gave you that hickey, you can find out what it means to be a vampire, she said with Naruto nodding his head. I think that would be best, said Naruto as the two of them walked back to the house, only to find a large blanket of mist blanketing the entire area. What the hell? Asked Naruto looking about. My love, I feel a strong sense of hatred and chakra in that area, said Ahri pointing to the unfinished bridge. Then that's where we're going, said Naruto as they sprinted. But as they sprinted to the rest of the team, Naruto found himself dispersing into a torrent of bats and reappearing some few feet ahead of Ahri. Looking about as he tried to figure out what just happened to him, he began to concentrate. And sure enough, his body broke up into hundreds of bats and reappeared a few more feet away. This could come in handy, said Naruto as he dispersed into bats again and sped to his team with Ahri sprinting alongside the bats that was her lover. Bloody mess. Reappearing as the bats took on the form of Naruto, Naruto looked on as he spotted an ice dome-like prison, Sakura protecting Tazuna and Kakashi engaging with an enemy nin with a giant sword. Looking to Ahri, he nodded and vanished in a vortex of bats and went in to help Sasuke, which would possibly be the last time. Even though Naruto had just fed, he felt that Sasuke would end up as a corpse by the time he was done with him. Appearing before Sasuke in a vortex of bats, he watched on as Sasuke stood there, shell-shocked at what Naruto had just done. Turning to the many faces in the mirrors, Naruto glared at the person. He was even more pissed off when he saw it was the same hunter nin. As his rage began to surge through the roof, so did an unholy energy. Black mist and vapor flowed off his body as he glared at the hunter nin with hatred. Licking his fangs as he slowly stepped forward to the mirrors. Your blood had better taste as good as Ares, chirped Naruto as he charged forward. So fast, said Sasuke as he looked to see that Naruto moved so fast it looked like he teleported. The mirror shattered into millions of pieces as the mirrors threw needles at Naruto. All connected to Naruto as they punctured his skin, but what happened only became more than what the hunter nin feared. The needles were slowly pulled out of Naruto's skin by themselves and were shattered in the air. Slowly looking to the hunter nin as Naruto's eyes turned red with hate. The hunter nin soon found the cage it had created getting extremely hot as the one above shattered into pieces once more. Spotting something on the one image, Naruto found that the clothing was slightly burnt. No doubt from Sasuke's fire jutsu. But his train of thought was brought out when a needle was sent into his arm. Finding the needle there, Naruto pulled it out but soon found that his blood was flowing away from the wound and into his hand. Seeing his blood form a small ball, Naruto got an idea. Thrusting out his hand after it back, he watched as the blood was launched with accuracy and destroyed the mirror. Incredible, said Naruto as he gathered up more blood and fired them at the mirrors. The hunter nin watched as Naruto destroyed each and every one of its mirrors. With the mirror it was hiding in being the only one left, Naruto charged full force to the mirror. The hunter nin got out just in time as the mirror was shattered into a million pieces like all the others. Turning to Naruto only to be grabbed by the throat and lifted up, the mask soon fell to find that the hunter was a girl. Well, 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 what an amazing face you have, my dear. Hope your blood tastes as nice as you look, said Naruto, opening his mouth to drink from the person's neck. I'm actually a guy, you, chirped the nin. Come again, said Naruto, stopping himself. I'm a boy, even though I look like a girl, barked the nin. What is your name? Asked Naruto. Haku, said the nin. Well, you are Toby my lunch now. I promise, this won't hurt at all, said Naruto as he brought his fangs close to her neck. But was stopped once again by Haku going through his tragic backstory of his life. Naruto really hated the whole history lesson. To him, this girl was just stalling to not become lunch, but that was when he was reminded by what he went through growing up. How he lost everything and how he never seemed to find anyone that cared for him. Slowly putting him down and calming his desires, Naruto lowered his head. I see. Then, why don't you come live in Konoha? I'm sure we can place you under supervision. After that you could get enrolled there, said Naruto. I don't know. Regarding Zabuza, he may decline the offer, said Haku as Naruto soon smelt blood once more. Dispersing in a vortex of bats as Haku shinned away, Naruto reappeared before Kakashi slammed his hand into a severely wounded Zabuza. He grabbed the hand and stopped it then and there while Ahri kept a watch over the area to see if anyone would attack. Naruto, what are you doing? Asked Kakashi. Haku then explained the life of how him and Zabuza lived. But as he told Kakashi, a strange sound of laughter was heard from the other side of the bridge with a large group of people standing there with weapons drawn. The mist jutsu that was active dispersed to reveal them there. Who the are you? Asked Naruto. Name's Gato kid, and this village is mine, said the man as he smiled. I don't like the vibe I'm getting from you, growled Naruto. That's because I'm very bad news, chuckled the man. Kill the men, but leave the women and children. The women can be used for my entertainment. The children can be sold into slavery. That last part, Gato looked over to Ahri as he licked his lips while he took in the woman before him. Despite the animalistic feature, she was extremely attractive. How about it, dear? Want to be mine? I'll give you a collar, pet you every day and show you a really good time, said Gato with Ahri glaring at him. Naruto merely growled as he clenched his fists as his power swirled violently. How dare this bastard try and prove something? Naruto felt his vampiric nature grow more and more with every bit of hatred that seeped out of his body. Ahri took note of this and merely sashayed over to Naruto with a sway in her hips. Take them down, my love, she purred as she moved her hair out the way to show her neck to him. Naruto clamped down on her neck and drank a small bit of her blood. Ahri merely moaned from the feeling as she ran a hand through his hair. When Naruto was done, he gave her a kiss and sped off to the approaching enemy. It all happened in the blink of an eye. 1 second, the enemy was speeding to them, the next, their heads were gone with Naruto standing there with two heads of two of the thugs. Everyone went wide-eyed at what happened as Naruto dropped the heads and turned to the masses. Let's dance, said Naruto as he charged again. Blood flew everywhere as Naruto unleashed his ungodly speed on the enemy before him. Gato watched on in fear as he watched every single thug he had hired get obliterated by Naruto as he tore them to shreds. Sinking his teeth into one of the thugs, Naruto drained him of his blood, leaving nothing but an empty husk of flesh. Monster! Cried one of the thugs as they tried to stop the person before them. But they didn't even get far as Naruto mowed them down by slicing off the heads as if they were paper, using his blood as a bullet or by a simple bite and drain. With the forces all dead, Naruto turned his attention to the last man being Gato who was struggling to get away. Naruto moved with as much speed as he could master and grabbed Gato before he could get away and threw him onto the concrete and glared at him with his fire-red eyes. Please spare me, he begged. Give me your banking details first, said Naruto. Gato quickly pulled out a piece of paper and scribbled on it and handed it to Naruto. Taking the paper, Naruto crumpled it up and threw it away. Your real one, jackass, growled Naruto. Gato shook with fear as he raised his pen and wrote once more on the paper. Once done, he handed it to Naruto. Naruto looked over the numbers and pocketed it. Thank you for your help, said Naruto as he opened his mouth and sunk his fangs into Gato's neck. Gato screamed and howled in pain as he felt his blood leave his body and into the boy latched onto his neck. He fought back by kicking and punching Naruto, but Naruto kept his mouth secured to the man's neck similar to that of a pit bull with someone's arm in its mouth. After a few minutes of struggling, Gato passed on as Naruto removed his mouth from the man's neck. Not the best blood I've tasted. Let me rephrase that. That is the worst blood I've had. Tastes like rotten apples, said Naruto, wiping his mouth of the blood. Getting up and heading to his team, they headed back to Tazuna's house to rest up for a bit, with Zabuza falling onto the couch and Haku thanking Naruto and going out to help Tsunami with anything. But as they sat around, Sasuke took in Ahri before him. To him, she was everything he ever wanted. A woman with one hell of a rocking body. Walking over to the demon, he got her attention. "Can I help you?" hissed Ahri. "Why not be mine?" stated Sasuke. Try again. I'm already mated to another," said Ahri before latching onto Naruto's arm. "It wasn't a request. It was an order. You now get on your knees and begin your job," said Sasuke, only to find his arm broken by Naruto. "Leave my mate alone, you bastard. Or I will kill you," growled Naruto. "This isn't over yet," growled Sasuke, walking away while holding his broken arm. "Damn, my love. That was hot. I hope you can show me something hot later on," said Ahri, licking her lips. "Oh, there will be a lot to show you," said Naruto. "As I already know. Man alive," said Ahri, licking her lips at how equipped her mate was. Waking up the next morning and heading off back to Konoha once the bridge was done, they arrived at Konoha by midday and headed to the Hokage's office, where they were debriefed. Haku and Zabuza were placed under supervision, much like how Naruto predicted, and ensured they were looked after by Naruto, who showed them his apartment. Zabuza crashed on the couch and Haku took the other room. Ahri chose to sleep in the same bed as Naruto, and quite frankly, he didn't mind at all. They were an item now. Better start acting like it. The scent of shyness. Waking up to a bright new morning, Naruto groaned as he felt the sun on his skin, with the sun once more beginning to burn him. Opening his eyes and shooting into a shaded corner, Naruto felt his skin repair once more, and the growl of his stomach pierced the space. Clicking his tongue as he found Ahri to no longer be with him in bed, Naruto soon heard water running. Walking out after getting dressed, Naruto made his way into the dining room and found Zabuza and Haku in the dining room. Haku was seen making food while Zabuza slouched in the one chair. "Yo, Fangs. What up?" asked Zabuza. "Not bad. You haven't told anyone about the fact that I'm a vampire, have you?" asked Naruto, with both of them shaking their heads. "We wouldn't dare. You saved us, so our lives belong to you," said Haku as he finished making breakfast. He then grabbed a glass from the cupboard in the kitchen, grabbed a glass and slit his wrist, allowing the blood to flow into it. When the blood reached the brim, Haku grabbed a plaster and placed it over his wound, while Zabuza handed the glass to Naruto as his eyes turned red. "Here, Fangs. Drink up," said Zabuza. Taking the glass, Naruto downed it and felt his bloodlust fade away like a simple breeze. Thanking Haku for the blood and finding it tasted like ramen, Naruto turned to find Ahri coming out the bathroom with nothing but a towel around her wondrous body, while her hair and tails were still slightly wet from the water. "Good morning, Ahri. Breakfast is ready," said Haku, setting the plates down for him, Zabuza and Ahri. "Thanks, kid. I take it you already gave Naruto his meal," said Ahri, with the boy nodding. "I did," said Haku, sitting down. "I'm confused," said Naruto. "Ahri here told us of the conditions for living in your house. We are to supply you with blood. That being the first condition. The next one is to keep your new life a secret. You know, the whole vampire thing," said Zabuza as Haku nodded. "I see. Well, I'm heading off," said Naruto. "Whoa, hold on there, Naruto," said Haku, grabbing his wallet and throwing it to Naruto, who caught it. "Take that and buy yourself some new threads. That orange thing is horrible," he said, with Naruto thanking him and heading out. When Naruto left, Zabuza turned to look at Ahri, who was happily eating away at the food before her. You know, as much as I enjoy staying with you. But can you tone down your little sessions down? Asked Zabuza with Ahri looking to him. Well, there is still more to come, said Ahri as she continued eating. Naruto walked down the roads of Konoha. Despite being in broad daylight and his blood boiling so much, he found that everything was more different. He got looks that were not of hate, but of curiosity. But as he moved along the road, his nose picked up something. It smelled like lavenders. It wasn't the smell of blood, this was something else. Quickly darting his head to the side, he spotted some blue hair dart back behind cover. I'm being followed, stated Naruto to himself as he kept moving. Arriving at a store, Naruto bought some new clothes that were sold to him at a 50% discount due to the owner being number 1, a girl. And number 2, she said he is really cute. Guess his new look was doing its job. What he bought and wore out the store was a plain white short-sleeved shirt, black baggy pants, some combat boots, shin guards, black fingerless gloves, 2 rings with a small needle that could be flicked out, 1 for each middle finger, and a long-sleeved black hooded trench coat. This would help him in the sun. He just prayed that he'd never have to feel that damn thing in the sky anymore now that he had covered up nicely. Making his way to a training spot, he began to concentrate. After that fight he had at Wave, he felt that there was more to his powers. Seeing that he could no longer feel his chakra but this strange new power, he wondered if there was more to it. Starting out small by using that bat thing he did, he vanished in a torrent of bats and reappeared some feet away with the bats coming together to form him. Getting the hang of it a few more times, Naruto found the concept to be rather easy. He had it to the point where he just needed to think of it and voila. Instant bat travel. He named the ability Bats. It was rather cliché seeing that he could vanish and reappear through bats, but it seemed fine for a name. But as he practiced with his new powers, he heard a branch break and Naruto instantly vanished. Appearing behind the one who broke the branch, Naruto glared daggers at who it was. But dismissed it when he saw it was Hinata. You saw me, didn't you? Said Naruto with Hinata stumbling back a bit. I'm sorry. She stuttered. You saw of what I can do. I'm sorry, but you're gonna have to die now, said Naruto as he opened his mouth with his eyes turning red. Hinata stood scared beyond measure as she looked at the fangs that protruded out Naruto's mouth. But for some reason, they didn't scare her that much. But one word from her stopped Naruto altogether. Pretty. She said, making Naruto close his mouth. Pretty. I'm a monster of the night. How is this pretty? Barked Naruto. I don't know. Other than the fact that you're pretty. Everyone is beautiful in their own right, said Hinata with Naruto dropping to his haunches. You're a peculiar one, aren't you? You're not afraid of me then? Asked Naruto with Hinata shaking her head. I read stories with supernatural being in it. This is nothing, said Hinata with Naruto raising an eyebrow. Well, this is new. So, do you even know what I am? Asked Naruto as Hinata nodded her head. A vampire, I think, she said. Well, newsflash, I am a vampire, stated Naruto with Hinata moving the neck of her jacket away to reveal her smooth unblemished skin to the man she was crushing on. Are you feeling hungry? She asked. You're taking this surprisingly well. But I could use a snack, said Naruto as he looked at Hinata's neck and saw the vein through her skin. Well, take some, she said. Naruto held onto Hinata and with great care, bit down on her neck making her bite her lower lip from the painful feeling. She soon began to moan from the feeling as Naruto began to suck on her blood. Naruto found Hinata's taste of blood to be rather exotic. It tasted like strawberries and cream. This was incredible. Gripping her tighter as he began to suck harder, Hinata felt more in pain as Naruto latched onto her more tighter. Tears soon flowed down her cheeks as the pain got to her. Tapping Naruto on the head, she felt his teeth leave her neck and him shooting away. I'm sorry. I didn't mean to hurt you, said Naruto with Hinata walking over to the vampire, wiping the tears from her eyes. Laying a hand on his shoulder, he knelt down to him and smiled to him. It's not a problem. If you ever need to feed, just ask me. But please be careful next time, said Hinata with Naruto looking to her as his eyes turned back to normal. I promise, said Naruto with Hinata smiling to him. Getting up and thanking her for the snack, Naruto headed away and found his team waiting at the bridge. Kakashi had some things to discuss regarding something. Arriving there, he found that Kakashi was late, again. Waiting for a bit while he looked at the clouds, Naruto's mind began to trace back to how he became like this. It hadn't been 3 days since he became a vampire. He had learned quite a bit with regards to his powers, but there was still more to learn. But as they waited, Sasuke walked over to the young vampire with Naruto's eyes locking with Sasuke. What? Hissed Naruto. Give me it, demanded Sasuke. Give you what? Asked Naruto, not liking his attitude. Your power. And that woman. Give me them. I deserve it, barked Sasuke. Nice try, but I can't make such a thing happen, said Naruto looking away. I'm an elite, a living legend. Give me what belongs to me, demanded Sasuke, only to find himself slammed against the railing with Naruto's hand around his throat. What part of, I can't give you it because it was mine to begin with? Don't you understand? I bet your blood isn't even that tasty. I can smell it from here, growled Naruto with his eyes changing red with rage. Let Sasuke go, you weakling. And give him what he demands. You should be honored to be in his presence, shouted Sakura on the top of her lungs, only to find Naruto's hand around her throat. Maybe I should educate you in the difference. Sasuke, I'm like this because of what happened in the past. As for Ahri, I can't give you her because she and I are mated for life. As for you, Sakura, I should just drain your blood and then dance on your grave, said Naruto as he slowly opened his mouth, ready to do the deed. Naruto, stop this, said Kakashi, appearing with the vampire, dropping the two and turning to his sensei. Don't you dare back chat me. Especially in front of someone who has transcended death itself. You couldn't even hold a candle to me. I will ensure this world burns for what it has done, growled Naruto before slamming his mouth shut. What did I just say? What am I becoming? Thought Naruto before looking to Kakashi. I apologize, said Naruto with Kakashi handing each of them a slip of paper. Take this. These are for the Chunin exams happening a week from now. During that time, you are to train or do whatever you wish of. Report to the academy after the week is up, said Kakashi before shunning away. Pocketing the slip of paper, Naruto clicked his tongue as he walked away. What did he do? Why did he act in such a way? Why did he feel so angry then? Why did those words flow out his mouth? But as he was thinking it to what happened, an ABNU appeared before him wearing a Neko mask and had purple hair that flowed to the middle of her back. Naruto Uzumaki. You are to report to the council at once, said the Anbu. Okay, said Naruto, rolling his eyes and going with the Anbu. When he reappeared, they waited outside the council room as he heard Hiruzen's voice on the other side. He seemed to be in a state of rage. No doubt because the civilian council was plotting something against him yet again. This wasn't the first time he appeared before the council. The first time he appeared here was because he fought back against a person who was after his life. Naruto was only 7 at the time. He was called to see the council then, after he injured the assailant. When they heard Hiruzen's voice on the other side, the two entered the room. But when Naruto stepped through the doors, the smell of wet dog invaded his senses. And man, did it put him off, badly. Looking over to Sume Inuzuka, he found that she was giving off the smell. Must be due to the dogs she kept with her. Naruto Uzumaki, you have been called here because of the notion of what happened at Wave. It has come to our attention that you have brought in some wanted nin, said a civilian councilwoman. So what? They've been granted safe haven here, barked Naruto, only to have a fat civilian councilman slam his hand on the table. You will know your place, demon. And you will answer our questions. He barked, only to have Naruto moved with incredible speed and glare at him. Everyone stared on in shock at what Naruto just did. 1 second he was standing by the ABNU, the next, he was before the councilman. How did he move that fast? No one could keep up. Let's get one thing straight here. I am nobody's pet. I never was, and never will be. As for the question, I already answered it. Dumb. Hissed Naruto with his eyes glowing red. Danzo saw this and raised an eyebrow. Naruto, please calm down. But the other reason why you are here is because you are to be given your inheritance, said Hiruzen holding out a scroll. Snatching it away from Hiruzen, Naruto unraveled it and began to read. When he was done, Naruto handed it back to Hiruzen while a smile graced his lips. So you're giving me my home that belongs to me. Glad to see that, but I also noticed that there was one more thing there, said Naruto with Hiruzen nodding his head. Yes, as it goes to show, you are probably the last Uzumaki in existence. So, by this decree, you have been placed under CRA. You are to take on multiple women to bring back the Uzumaki clan, said Hiruzen. And what if I don't want that? Asked Naruto. Then it is your decision. And we will respect that, said Hiruzen. Adjourning the meeting, Naruto went his own way. But as he walked along the road, Naruto smelt the smell of wet dog yet again. And it seemed to be following him. Heading down a route no one knew of, he vanished in a torrent of bats and appeared right behind the one tailing him. Well, if it isn't Sume Inuzuka acting like a stalker, said Naruto, scaring the woman to death. I just wanted to know from you. What happened to you? Why do you seem different? And how did you do that? She asked. So many questions. Come by to my new home, being the one I was given in my inheritance. There I will show you what I am, said Naruto. Agreeing to this, they headed out and went their separate ways. Naruto returned back to his apartment to inform Ahri, Zabuza and Haku that they will be moving now. And that he may have shown his power to someone by mistake. Oh well, if they try and tell anyone, they'd die through being bitten. With Danzo, walking along the hallways of Root as many Anbu were seen training in the power stolen. Danzo made his way to a jail cell deep in the heart of Root. When he reached the door, he opened it and walked inside to reveal a woman with long flowing red hair that came to her waist. This woman was perfect in every way. Her body was like that of a model, topped with DD cup breasts and a heart-shaped face. The perfect MILF was what one would describe her as. Danzo knelt down to her and lifted her head. Looks like your son has made quite the power for himself. It doesn't matter. It will belong to me soon. And when it does, there will be nothing left. Cackled Danzo with the woman began to cry. Oh Naruto. Forgive me. I'm so sorry. Sobbed the woman as Danzo left her alone. I just pray that you're okay, she said as her head dropped down. Unzipping her jacket and showing him her neck where he bit her previously. Naruto felt his bloodlust surface as he looked to the vein. His mouth soon opened and made his way to Hinata. But as he was about to bite down, Ahri stepped forward and hit him on the back of the head through a karate chop. What the hell, Ahri? Asked Naruto looking to her. You're getting greedy, Naruto. One feeding a day. Should I begin rationalizing you? She barked in an authoritative tone. I'll behave, said Naruto. I went to your apartment and found it empty. When I went to the Hokage's office, he told me that you moved here, said Hinata with Naruto scratching the back of his head. Yeah, sorry about. I wanted to tell you, said Naruto with Hinata shaking his head as she zipped up her jacket. It's fine, as long as you're happy, said Hinata with them heading out. Check you guys later, called Naruto as he closed the door. Such a nice girl, said Zabuza. Naruto used his bat's ability while he kept up with Hinata. Soon they tracked him down and watched from their tree perch. Naruto reformed his body as he looked to the man. Hinata looked to him and held out her hand. Lunch is served, I guess, she said as Naruto licked his fangs. Vanishing in a volley of bats once more, Naruto zeroed in on the man and reappeared before him. The man didn't have time to think as Naruto latched his mouth onto his neck and began to drink up the blood in the man's veins. The blood tasted awful, but man, was Naruto going through his mind? One thing that he soon spotted was a memory of the man as he stood before a woman with blood-red hair, cladded in rags and chained to the wall. She kept muttering his name and repeatedly apologizing for something. There was no mistaking it. It had to be his mother. Searching through his memories again, Naruto found a secret entrance deep in the sewer system of Konoha. So that was why he smelt like shit. Literally. He had to investigate this when he was done here with the second phase. He had to see about this woman who he had a strong feeling was his mother. He had to know. As well, he had to ensure that there was no other prisoners there. He had a feeling that there was. Removing his fangs from the man's neck, Naruto leaned against the tree and threw up the blood then and there. Hinata jumped down to Naruto and ushered sweet words to him as he threw the blood up. "What did you see?" she asked. "A woman. I think she is my mother. She kept saying my name and kept apologizing. Not only that, but a secret entrance in the sewers of Konoha," said Naruto with Hinata nodding her head. "I know you have to do this. But first, you must need something to wash that horrible taste from your mouth," said Hinata as she opened her jacket and showed her neck to Naruto. The bite marks she had were healed up rather nicely. But that wasn't going to be the case her anymore as Naruto clamped his mouth onto Hinata's neck and began to drink from her. Keeping his mind focused on not causing pain to her, Naruto drank a nice helping of blood before removing his fangs from her neck and thanking her for the meal. Both of them went their separate ways to return to their teams. Naruto found them easily as he used his vampiric speed while Hinata tracked her team with her Byakugan. With the vampire that bit Naruto, the raven-haired beauty could be seen draining a victim of blood as she sat there in a dark alleyway of Konoha as she drained a person of his blood. This victim she easily seduced using her body. Seeing that she had a rocking body to begin with. Removing her fangs from the man's neck, she walked out and wiped away any traces that she was a vampire. Her red eyes dyed out to be a beautiful emerald green once more. As she walked about the streets of Konoha, she began to think on how she was going to keep that man's mouth shut. She did think about running away from the village, but stopped herself when she realized that she injected her venom into the man. Should it play out, her venom would kill the man easily. Her venom was quite potent. But if there was any slim chance that he would survive, then he'd become a nightlord vampire like she was. But that was such a rarity now. Plus, the more ethical way to turn someone was to give vampire blood to the person and them drink it. After that, kill the person and poof. Instant vampire. But seeing that should you give a human the blood of a vampire, the person becomes a lesser vampire when they turn. Making that vampire a subordinate to the one who turned him, her. But as she walked past some people, ignoring the lustful stares she got from them, she overheard a conversation. "Hey, did you hear? Apparently the demon brat attacked a councilman," said a woman. "Nah, I heard he moved so fast, he ripped him apart. No one could see his speed. Lord Hokage said it was so fast, the Sharingan may not even keep up," said another woman. "I heard his eyes turned color from warm blue to demonic red when he lost his temper," said a woman. Ducking into an alleyway to think, the raven-haired vampire began to think. It was impossible. How was this even possible? Her venom was potent beyond compare. It should have killed him. She was certain of that. How was he still alive? But then it hit her. "Oh," she said as she sped away, hoping to track him down. "If what they said is true, then I just created a nightlord vampire. A vampire who is on par with my own ranking and strength. This is bad. If he can't control this power, then the existence of the vampire will be gone for good," she said as she moved through the village to track him down. "Is there a cure?" asked Tamari. "I don't think there is one," said Naruto. "But why did you attack me out of the blue like that?" asked Tamari. "I'm sorry for that. I didn't mean to bite you like that. I was just really hungry. Which I don't understand. Because before I transformed, I was fully fed," said Naruto. "Transformed?" questioned Tamari. "I don't even know that myself. A lot remains as unknowns for me," said Naruto. "Either way, I'm glad I met a real vampire. Everything I've read is now true. Thank you. And I swear, I will keep your secret hidden," said Tamari before walking away. "Man, I should find out what the hell I just did," said Naruto before he himself walked off to find his team. Red eyes. With the second stage of the exams now completed, the teams that had been thinned out by exactly half were now taken into a hall where they'd be doing a 1 versus 1 match-up by random selection. Many names came through the screen and stopped on 2 names. Naruto didn't even watch the screen. His mind was occupied on too much. For one, he clearly remembered he was fully fed thanks to Hinata giving him some blood when he killed that man after drinking his blood and throwing it up. But when he transformed, he was blood-starved when he turned back to normal. Then there was that raven-haired woman. She stopped him from going on a rampage. But what she did made him think. Sure, it was the same one that bit him, but there was something even more than that. He felt like there was a connection. Like there was a huge amount of information he was missing. Like a puzzle piece is missing preventing from this to be complete. And then there was the memory of that man he drained completely. That memory of that woman apologizing and calling his name. What the heck was going on here? His mind was so occupied that he failed to notice it was now into the 4th match already and he was facing up against Kiba. The Inuzuka jumped over the railing while Naruto merely walked down the stairs. Not even bothering with the fact that Kiba was even throwing snotting remarks at him for how much of a weakling he was. And how he was going to wipe the floor with Naruto. Naruto just scoffed at this statement as he imagined Kiba trying to take him down. Clearly Kiba didn't know anything about the power of a vampire. Once Naruto was standing opposite Kiba, Genma told them to begin. Look at you. You don't even so strong. I'd love to show you what power is, said Kiba arrogantly. That's rich coming from you. Clearly you don't even know what true power is, said Naruto as a hand moved to be over his face. Closing eyes only to shoot them open 3 seconds after, Kiba found himself standing before a large torrent of bats as they chirped and screeched at him. Their dangerous red eyes, hungry for the blood that coursed through his veins while Naruto moved to Kiba while in his vampire mode flew over to him. Kiba dropped to the floor as Akamaru trembled in fear at what they both just saw. There was no way that was real. Yet it felt like it was. So much power it wasn't even funny. Genma and everyone looked at the scene before them while Gaara merely shook in fear but only slightly. Mother is afraid, said Gaara making his siblings look to him. That can't be good. For this kid to make Gaara afraid like that, shows that this guy insta around, said Kankuro as Tamari nodded. That's power, right there, said her hand traveled to where Naruto bit her. Naruto merely walked to Kiba similar to how a wolf does with its prey. Kiba's eyes were glued to Naruto's glowing ones. It was incredible. This intense feeling of absolute fear radiated from Naruto's every pore as he kept his eyes locked with Kiba's. But Kiba soon steeled himself and decided to fight back against this creature. Popping a pill and feeding one to Akamaru, they attacked Naruto. Both were seen drilling towards Naruto as they attacked with everything they had. But Naruto wasn't having any of it. This was such a game to him. Why not play with your food? Grabbing Akamaru and Kiba, Naruto threw them so hard they crashed into the wall under the balcony. Turning to them, Naruto created a few wind slicers in the air. Thanks to Temari's blood, he could do that. Firing a few at Kiba, he watched as the Inuzuka jumped out the way, only to find Naruto already in the air. Too slow, said Naruto as he backhanded Kiba into the ground. Kiba instantly slammed into the floor as a massive crater burst through the area. Naruto merely dropped down as he folded his arms and walked away. Such a shame. And here I was hoping you'd be a better challenge for me, said Naruto only to turn and see Kiba struggling to stay on his feet. I will beat you, barked Kiba as he saw Akamaru laying to the side. Naruto merely shook his head as he sped to Kiba and grabbed his neck, lifting him up into the air and began to squeeze. I don't think you realize the situation you're in. I am not to be messed with. I am more powerful than you. I could very easily snap your neck should I choose it, said Naruto as his eyes grew a more stronger red as Naruto bared his fangs. Stop this, said Hiruzen. Why should I? Barked Naruto. Please stop this, asked Kurenai as she shunned Shin to be before Naruto. Red eyes met with demonic red eyes. Naruto took in the woman before him as he rather enjoyed the sight her was seeing. Licking his lips as he took a nice helping hand of the scent of her blood. Oh wow, such a rather delicious scent. Grapes. Delicous. Said Naruto, making Kurenai arch an eyebrow. Throwing Kiba down, Naruto walked off as Genma called the match. Leaning against the railing, Naruto began to have a nice conversation with Hinata. But as the two talked, the screen flashed up and showed two names. Neji and Hinata. This was bad. Naruto knew the branch family had a rather strong grudge against the main family. Something about some trivial bullshit that Naruto didn't care for. Warning Hinata to be careful, he wished her luck as he looked at the match. As he watched the match, he found that Kurenai was approaching him. Standing before the vampire, she whispered into his ear. "Why did you say that I smell like grapes?" She whispered. "Oh, that was the smell of your blood. It smelt like grapes," said Naruto, licking his lips. "Are you into S&M like Anko?" asked Kurenai, worried that Naruto may have been infected by the snake Chunin. Naruto merely chuckled as he shook his head. "Not even close. In fact, I'd be willing to show you sometime. But you must keep it a secret," said Naruto, looking to the match. He found Hinata on equal ground with Neji, but the boy had a rather dark side to what was happening. These matches were meant to be about proving strength. Naruto could sense some personal tension in the situation. His suspicions were confirmed when Neji gave a strike to Hinata's lung, making her cough out a bit of blood. His teeth grinded against each other as how this bastard attacked his woman. How dare he? But seeing Kushina fight back but with more power, Naruto found her to be rather on par with Neji once more. She had come so far with everything. Naruto was proud of her. But he soon went wide-eyed as he gasped in shock when Neji made a move and struck her heart this time. "You don't even deserve such a name. You're a disgrace to our family. You're a disgrace to the Hyuga name. You don't even know what it means to have a person you cared for ripped from you. Of course you don't. Why should you? You look down on everyone," hissed Neji, giving Hinata blow after blow to her chest. Hinata cried out in pain as blood flowed out her mouth. That was it. Naruto vanished in a vortex of bats and was instantly standing between Neji and Hinata, Neji's hand in Naruto's hands. His eyes glazed with hatred as Naruto stared at Neji. "Enough," growled Naruto with Neji scoffing. "This doesn't concern you. I suggest you leave before you get hurt," said Neji, only for Naruto to remain unfazed by the threat. "You do realize you're talking to someone far beyond your own understanding. I outrank you in every way," barked Naruto. "As if. You don't even have the power to take me down," hisses Neji, only for Naruto to begin squeezing the wrist of Neji. Neji cringed and whimpered as how Naruto was crushing his wrist. Dropping to one knee, Neji begged Naruto to let go. But Naruto kept his grip strong and continued to put pressure on the wrist. It wasn't long until several Chunin came and stopped Naruto by holding kunai to his throat. "Naruto, stop this," ordered Kakashi. "Why should I?" He hurt Hinata. "I do not tolerate such insolent behavior," growled Naruto. "Please Naruto, release him," asked Hinata from behind her vampire crush. Slowly letting go of Neji, who took his slightly damaged wrist into a hand, Naruto turned to Hinata and laid a hand on her as a smile graced his lips. "I will do anything for you," said Naruto as Hinata collapsed into his arms, blood flowing out her mouth. Shooting as fast as he could, Naruto sped to a hospital to look at her and see if she was okay. While he was away, they began to draws for the final matches. Seeing that Naruto wasn't around, they found his number was to be number 1. While Neji got a number 2. Looks like they'd be versing each other in the finals. When Naruto arrived at the hospital, he placed Hinata on a bed and pulled open her jacket to see what was wrong with her. As he assessed her, the door slid open to reveal Seraphim standing there. She leaned against the door as she looked from the one on the bed to Naruto. "There is a way to save her," said Seraphim with Naruto spinning on his feet to look at her. "How? Tell me," ordered Naruto with Seraphim walking over to Naruto. "Your blood is actually a saving grace. But it is permanent. No switches. But it must be her option, said Seraphim, laying a hand on Hinata with her eyes slowly opening. There is a lot of damage done to you by the one you fought against. You will die seeing he struck your heart. There is a way to save you, said Seraphim. How? Asked Hinata. Naruto feeds you his blood, said Seraphim. I can do that, asked Naruto with Seraphim nodding her head. By feeding a human the blood of a vampire, the human becomes a vampire. But seeing that it is the blood of a vampire and not the venom, you will become the one who turned you. You will become his underling. A subordinate, said Seraphim. Just feed her my blood. That's it, asked Naruto with Seraphim nodding. That's it. I'll get a blood pack ready, she said, walking out. It's your choice, Hinata, said Naruto as Hinata placed a hand on his cheek. Do it, she commanded. Biting his wrist, Naruto held it out for Hinata. Placing her lips over the wound, Hinata drank up the blood given to her and instantly, her body felt hot. So hot in fact that she brushed Naruto's arm away rather fast as she began to cough up some blood, followed by her no longer moving. The door slid open to reveal Seraphim standing there with 3 blood packs. One for her, one for Naruto and one for the soon-to-be vampire. Congratulations. You've just made a vampire, said Seraphim as they waited for Hinata to move. How long until she wakes up? Asked Naruto. A few minutes, hours. It varies from person to person, said Seraphim. A few minutes went by and Hinata soon breathed in rather sharply as she surged to be sitting on the bed. But her skin soon began to burn while her face scrunched from the pain. Shooting into a corner, she watched as her skin repaired itself. Her eyes were still their standard lavender color, but now had a slight red to them. Seraphim walked over to the vampire fledgling, and handed her the blood pack. Hinata took it and found it smelled so delicious. She downed it instantly. And just like that, her transformation into a vampire was complete. However, her eyes stayed as they were with the red tint in them. Welcome to the vampire life, said Seraphim. Hinata slowly got up and smiled to Naruto but then realized that she could no longer supply Naruto with blood, seeing that she was now a vampire. Hanging her head, she made her way to Naruto. I'm sorry, I can no longer supply you with blood, said Hinata, reading up that once a human becomes a vampire, feeding is no longer on the table for the one who turned them. That's no problem, said Naruto, slinging an arm around her and bringing her close to him. But thank you for saving me, said Hinata, smiling to him, showing him her fangs. No problem, said Naruto, giving a smile as well. This is all touching and shit. But seeing that you've got a month to get trained up, I'm gonna be teaching you how to control your powers as a vampire, said Seraphim with Naruto shaking his head. I want to first find the woman calling my name. Then you can train me, stated Naruto, only to be slammed against the wall by Seraphim. You'd rather abandon your training over some bitch you know nothing about. You'd be going against vampire laws. The only time you save someone is if you wish to have them as a mate, or an underling, snarled Seraphim with Naruto breaking from the hold. I'd rather do the one thing I know. Save her. I don't give a shit about training. It's been eating me away. I am going to save her, growled Naruto. You're making a grave mistake, hissed Seraphim. Check for the worry in my eye, retorted Naruto before jumping out the window. Vampiric kin. Making his way into the streets of Konoha, Naruto looked around and found headed to a sewer entrance. The thought of what he would find down there kept playing in his mind. He didn't know what to expect at all. But he kept his mind strong and opened a manhole to the sewers. Jumping down into the sewer, Naruto found he could see rather well in the dark. Must be because of his vampire powers. Using the man's memories as a map, Naruto followed the path that the man took and soon came to a dead end. Reaching out, he found a brick that was slightly pushed out. Pushing it in, he smiled as a clicking sound echoed through the sewers as a secret entrance opened up. Walking in, he found a large underground area that was rather impressive. Walking over to the railing, Naruto peered down and found it went up for miles. How deep does this thing go? He wondered. But he soon heard the sounds of people muttering, and then shout out when they spotted him. Vanishing in a vortex of bats, Naruto appeared before them and drained them of blood. Dropping the last man, Naruto found that this underground base was actually called Root. A group of Anbu trained under Danzo to be loyal pets to him and him alone. Not only that, but many sinister experiments were conducted here as well. Trying to fuse cells with others to create the perfect soldier in a sense. The idea sickened him beyond compare actually. But it didn't end there. From what he saw in the one guy's memories, he found that the woman begging for forgiveness from Naruto was being used to supply cells to Danzo in order to create a powerful soldier. Not only that, but Danzo was actually planning to now create the perfect soldier through her. And the way he was planning on doing it was by having every Root Anbu rape her one by one. Should she conceive, the raping will stop, but continue again once she has given birth. Such an idea of a woman being defiled like that absolutely drove him over the edge. So much so, that Naruto didn't realize it until it happened, when he found himself already in his vampire mode. He had to get to her now, or she will end up an empty husk, raped constantly by many men en route. Shooting off as his wings flapped behind him, making his speed even faster, he made his way down the halls and levels of Root. With Danzo sitting at his desk that was right at the bottom of the base, Danzo signed the papers he had before him. Such an idea of doing that to Kushina never crossed his mind until now. It was perfect. Have her become pregnant with one of the dozens of men en route. Use the child as a weapon for him to use as he saw fit. Repeat until she either dies, or can no longer conceive. He'd be the first to break her in. Seeing that the time was right, he head out the room and to Kushina's cell. But little did he know, was that he had an intruder. And it was in the form of a vicious, angry vampire. Opening the cell door, he made his way inside as he took off his clothing to reveal his body to Kushina, who hung her head as she contemplated on how this happened. All she remembered was giving birth to Naruto. The next she was here. Her cells and DNA ripped tortuously from her body. Looking up, she saw Danzo standing there as he jacked himself off, getting hard from her as a smile plastered his face. Get ready, you demon, because you're gonna give Root more soldiers right now, said Danzo as Kushina backed away, but couldn't as the shackles refused this. No, don't. Please, I beg you. I'll do anything. She begged as her feet thrash about, desperately trying to move away from Danzo. Oh, you will do it. Anything for me and Root. Should you no longer be able to conceive, you'll just be used as a cum-dump, said Danzo as his member stood proudly before Kushina. Which wasn't that big at all. No, I don't want that. Please, don't do it, begged Kushina as images of herself being filled with many other men's cum sent shivers down her spine from the thought. Get ready. Here I go, said Danzo as he stood over her and unshackled her, but not before putting on chakra suppressants on her along with strength resistors. No, Naruto, she cried as Danzo lifted her up and positioned himself behind her. But as he was about to plunge himself into Kushina's puss, a Root Anbu came into view and bowed to Danzo. Danzo clicked his tongue at how his fun was ruined before turning to the man. What? Can't you see I'm busy? Barked Danzo. I'm sorry, Lord Danzo, but we have an intruder, said the ABNU. Then get rid of him. I'm about to grow Root, said Danzo. That's the thing, we've sent countless forces at the thing. But it just keeps vanishing into a volley of bats. And before we know it, 3 to 7 Root ABNU are dead before it, said the Root Anbu. Tisk. Then try and slow him down. I'm getting ready here to this demon, barked Danzo with the Root Anbu moving away to carry out his orders. I hope you scream in pleasure, said Danzo as he brushed his past Kushina's lower lips. Kushina shuddered from the feeling as a lone tear fell down her cheek as to what was about to befall her. With Naruto. With the vampire now in his vampire mode, Naruto was rather pissed off. He was wasting time. These guys were obviously slowing him down by a large amount. He had to get to Kushina now. Or else it was too late. He didn't know why he was doing this other than the fact that he had to. Like some unseen force was making him do this. Like he had to find and keep her safe. Thinking enough was enough, Naruto dropped down from his hovering form to now be on the ground. Naruto soon slammed his hands on the ground as a roar escaped his lips. From the stone ground emerged something never seen before. It was completely made up of the ground itself as rocks floated everywhere as it looked to the forces before it. Pointing at the root Anbu before him, Naruto commanded the beast to attack them. And attack it did. Leaving the rock beast to handle this, Naruto vanished in a vortex of bats once again and sped down further and further. Time was of the essence. His very body was on such a high with the amount of blood in the air and the amount of adrenaline coursing through his veins. But rage was also being mixed into the equation as Naruto moved more and more faster. Reforming back to be in his vampire mode again, Naruto slammed into the ground as he flew over to the cell that housed Kushina. When he arrived he saw two things. The first was Kushina being in tears. The next was Danzo who was behind her howling in laughter as he thrusted in and out of her. This of course drove Naruto into a hell rage as he sped and grabbed Danzo, pulling him off Kushina and throwing him through the cell wall. Not into it, through it. Bricks and rock went everywhere as Danzo coughed out a lot of blood when he came to a skidding halt a few feet away from the cell of Kushina. Turning around as she hid her body, Kushina soon felt fear grip her as she stared at the monster before her. A 7-foot-tall beast that was out of her deepest nightmares stood there, looking at Danzo as its wings beat a bit before folding again. The beast then turned to Kushina and knelt down. Kushina turned away from the beast as she couldn't bear the thought of looking it in the eyes in fear of losing her mind should she. "Please, don't hurt me," she cried. Naruto merely stared at her. He knew his vampire mode was terrifying. But to do this was on another level. Seeing that she was in the process of being raped, it was understandable as her fear was on a new level when he made himself known. "How dare you interrupt me in my session? You will pay for this," trailed Danzo as he looked at the brick and stone wall he was thrown out of. How in the world? That wall was meant to be unbreakable. It was even infused with chakra, he stated as Naruto came out from the cell and glared at him. "Hurt her," started Naruto. "You pay." And just like that, Naruto vanished and reappeared before Danzo and kicked him in the ribs. A loud snapping sound echoed across the area as Danzo was sent, rocketing into the wall of the base. Naruto soon reappeared before Danzo and grabbed him a second time. Throwing him high into the air, Naruto flew after him. Once he was high enough, Naruto punched Danzo in the gut, sending him into the ground as a massive crater was made upon impact with the ground. "What are you?" asked Danzo, struggling to get back onto his feet. Naruto stayed silent as he used his wings and hovered to Danzo. Soon, Danzo felt fear like never before. In all his days, the old warhawk never felt fear before. Up until now, this monster before him was like a monster that came from the very depths of hell itself. Crawling backwards as Naruto stood over him, Danzo began to think on how to get out of this. "Please, spare me. I'll do anything. Just don't hurt me," begged Danzo. "Hurt her," said Naruto again. "You pay." Grabbing Danzo by the throat, Naruto lifted him up to where his feet were dangling off the floor. Danzo choked as he struggled to break free from the iron grasp of the vampire before him. Naruto reached out and grabbed the man by the head and pulled. Instantly, as if ripping paper, Danzo's head was removed from his shoulders. Danzo, of course, died instantly. Dropping the body and not even wanting to bother with draining the blood, Naruto howled in victory as he soon transformed back to normal with steam flowing off his body as he took on his human form once more. Shaking his head at how woozy he was after going into vampire mode, Naruto made his way back into the cell where he found Kushina sitting there as she shook in fear. "Easy. I'm not going to hurt you," said Naruto, throwing his hands in the air. "I don't believe you," said Kushina with a hiss. "Relax, I'm here to save you," said Naruto as he knelt before her. Kushina took in the man before and instantly felt like she was seeing a ghost. "Minato?" she asked with Naruto shaking his head. "No, sorry, I'm Naruto. he said with Kushina going wide-eyed. Naruto, you're okay. But how? What was that? She asked only to find herself being scooped up in Naruto's strong arms while she was laying in them bridal style. Rather ask the questions when we're out of this place, said Naruto as he used his strength to rocket them straight into the air with them landing on a platform. My name is Kushina, your mother. My son, she said as a tear rolled down her cheek at how she was reunited with her son. Nice to meet you, said Naruto as he continued to jump up to the top where he came in. Vampiric history. Arriving at the house and opening the doors, Naruto walked in and found the usual sight of two people giving blood. But this time instead of Haku and Zabuza, it was Ahri and Hana. Welcome home, said Hana before both of them looked to the woman in Naruto's arms. Who's this? Asked Ahri. This is Kushina, my mother, it would seem, said Naruto setting Kushina down on her feet and him taking off his coat and throwing it over her. But how is that possible? Kushina was presumed dead during the attack of Ahri, said Hana. Uzumakis can survive a lot. I was in a lot of pain after having Kyuubi removed from me, but I blacked out soon after that. The next thing I knew, I was in a cell in Root, and about to be raped by Danzo and his Anbu to produce more Root Anbu. If my son hadn't intervened, I'd have had my mind broke from being raped by so many men, said Kushina. I was wondering where you had gone off to. I remember seeing a man grab you while I was being sealed into my mate, said Ahri with Kushina arching an eyebrow before gasping in shock. You're. She trailed with Ahri nodding her head. Yes, my old jailer. I'm Kyuubi. My real name is Ahri. And I'm Naruto's mate, said Ahri with Kushina looking to her son. You're mated to Kyuubi, she said with Naruto shrugging his shoulders. She gave me a deal. Her blood, for me being her mate. I was hungry at the time, said Naruto with Kushina arching an eyebrow. That's another thing I want to know. What was that form you took when you rescued me? And what do you mean by blood? Asked Kushina as Seraphim appeared in a flurry of leaves. Simple really. Your son here is a vampire. Or better yet, the highest ranking of vampire you get. A nightlord, said Seraphim as Naruto scolded the one who turned him as Hinata came down the stairs and saw the scene before her. Why are you here? I thought you said you won't train me, barked Naruto with Seraphim smiling as she placed a hand on her hip. Oh that, I was simply testing you. See, vampires share one rule among us. Regardless of what rank you are. Never abandon family. Should you have chosen to be trained without going to save this woman, I've told you to die in a hole. But you passed it because you followed the rules set by vampires. Well done. Congratulated Seraphim. I see. So you were just testing me, said Naruto with Seraphim nodding her head. Yes, now, before I begin training you, you and your underling must be orientated on the history of the vampires, said Seraphim with Kushina stepping into the conversation. Underling. So far I've learned my son is a vampire. And that he is a nightlord at that. But what's an underling? And who? Asked Kushina trying to be brought up to speed. Right. An underling, in vampire terms, is a human that has been turned into a vampire by a nightlord vampire or another vampire. The vampire that turned the human becomes her master. And the vampire becomes the new vampire's master. In this case, this pale-eyed girl is Naruto's underling due to Naruto turning her, said Seraphim pointing to Hinata. You're a vampire? Asked Kushina only to see Hinata smile, showing off her fangs. Naruto saved me from nearly dying from heart collapse. It was the only way for me. So for me, I'm just a regular vampire. Not a nightlord, replied Hinata. Sit down if you wish to hear more, said Seraphim. Instantly, Naruto, Kushina and Hinata were seated before the nightlord as she stood there, her arms folded as she looked to the three before her. Now, for a human to become a vampire, the human must drink vampire blood. A simple bite and drink doesn't work. Or should I say won't work. The only way is through one of two methods. The second is only for nightlords. The common way is to drink vampire blood as I've told you. But this makes the human the vampire's underling. As I've told you, the second is what we nightlords call awakened gift. What we do is feed from the person. But as we're feeding, we inject a special venom into the human. This venom only can be used twice. Once the venom is in the human's bloodstream, they will transform into a vampire. That's if the venom doesn't kill you, said Seraphim with Ahri stepping into the discussion. What happens to the person should he die? Asked Ahri. Then, they die. Plain and simple. And the Nightlord is able to use Awakened Gift again. However, if the person does survive, they lose the ability entirely. I've used Awakened Gift only twice. And both times, the person survived. For you, Naruto, it was an accident. I was so mad for having so many people treat my kind as animals. Burning them and killing them with no remorse. I collapsed on the route you took. When I saw you there, all I saw was a human who hated vampires. I'm sorry for turning you into a Nightlord, said Seraphim. It's fine. I'm just happy that I can know what it's like on the other side of the food chain, said Naruto. Wait, if my son was the second person you bit and turned, then who was the first? Asked Kushina. A man named Yagura. He and I were good friends, but he soon became corrupted by the power he had. You see, he was the jailer for the three-tailed beast. Seeing that he was now both a Nightlord vampire and a Jinchuriki, the power went to his head. And so began the genocide in Kiri. Seeing that bloodline users walked about in Kiri, drove him into a psychotic rage. He felt that only one powerful force should exist and it was him that should be that powerful force. I tried to stop him, but I couldn't. I couldn't put down a friend of mine. I treated him like a brother. So I ran, said Seraphim. Well, that explains how to have become a vampire or Nightlord, but what about the hierarchy? Asked Naruto. There really isn't one. First you get the Nightlord vampires. You and me. We're at the top of the ranks. Similar to your daimyos. Then you get the vampires that were turned through drinking the blood of a Nightlord. They hold power the equivalent of a cage. They are quite high up there, trailed Seraphim as she noticed Hinata sitting there with stars in her eyes. Just thinking about her being so high up in the Peking order made her extremely flustered. She couldn't believe that by drinking Naruto's blood would give her this much of a ranking. Quote. Anyway, we call those type of vampires, blood-cursed vampires. From there, you get your normal vampires, called cursed vampires. Cursed vampires are humans that have been turned by a blood-cursed vampire. These can be described as your regular shinobi, from Genin to Anbu. Then you get your lesser vampires. Lesser vampires are humans that have been turned by a cursed vampire. These hold the very bottom of the chain. They are your civilian-type vampire. A list explaining it will be placed at the end of this chapter, said Seraphim. Okay, so that makes more sense. Now, what about the history? Asked Hannah. I was getting to that. I was born way before you came into existence. Lost count a few centuries back, but I've seen my fair share of everything. Vampires came into existence by Yami herself. She wanted to have a place where creatures of the night could also have a home and not be in hell. Only the ones of pure hearts were chosen to go into the human world. Kami agreed to this and soon created the humans. Over the years, humans became weary around vampires. Soon that weariness became fear. And from there, fear became hate. Humans began to attack vampires out of fear for what they could do. Also that they felt jealous that we vampires could do cool shit unlike them. Vampires soon decided to fight back, and so began the war. From there, an elite force in the humans fought against the vampires, calling themselves vampire hunters. As the years went on, the war was getting brutal, until a woman by the name of Kagaya Otsutsuki came into our midst. She stopped both the warring factions with the aid of the fruit of the god tree. With the war now finished, Kagaya married a Nightlord vampire and gave birth to 3 sons. The people lived in peace over the years. But some vampires didn't like the idea of some human coming in and seducing their leader. Sneaking into the one child's room, they murdered the child and framed the human maid that was tasked with taking care of the child. This sparked a rage never seen before in Kagaya's husband. He killed the maid who was innocent and ordered a kill order on every human in the world. With a new war ensuing, the humans were left undefended as the vampire hunters were driven into retreat. Taking it no longer, the humans stole the fruit from the god tree and ate it, gaining the power needed to fight off against the vampires. But this of course angered the god tree. And thus the Jubi was born. The rest you know. With the war dragging on as it is, the humans and vampires called a truce with one another. The truce was this. Vampires were to only feed on criminals and live among humans as normal people. The vampires agreed. But from the bowels of such an agreement, many of the remaining vampire hunters still bared a grudge against vampires, said Seraphim. What a history lesson, said Naruto and Hinata. Wait, you said that you had seen a few centuries. How old exactly are you? Asked Kushina with everyone looking to the vampire. As I said, lost count a few centuries back. But I'm sure I've seen at least 7, said Seraphim. You're 700 years old, gasped Hannah with everyone doing the same. As I said, I lost count. So let's just go with 723. That's still young for a nightlord, said Seraphim. How long can a vampire live for? Asked Hinata. We can live for eternity, stated Seraphim. We are beings that have died but are still alive. We walk the line between life and death. Okay. Well, can we get to training? Asked Naruto with Seraphim holding up a finger to stop him. Not just yet. One more thing you must learn. Territories, she said with everyone raising an eyebrow. What do you mean by that? Asked Ahri. Vampires have territories that they own. Only nightlords can have territories. Now the territories you have determine where you were born, said Seraphim looking to Kushina. Your mate was born here? She asked. Yes. Minato was born in Konoha, said Kushina. And where were you born? Asked Seraphim. I was born in Uzu, replied Kushina. So, by birthright, Konoha and Uzu belong to Naruto. It doesn't matter if a nightlord vampire was born or made, the territories are theirs. A nightlord vampire can gain territory through one of 3 means. 1. They mate with another nightlord vampire only if they are of opposite gender. 2. They create an alliance with another nightlord vampire. Or 3. They challenge another nightlord, pitting their territories as the prize. Should the third option be taken, only one nightlord can emerge from the battle, said Seraphim. So, by birthright when I became a nightlord, Konoha and Uzu belong to me. What is your territory? Asked Naruto. Kiri. Though Yagura is carrying on that it belongs to him, said Seraphim. So, I've just learned everything there is to know about vampirism. Can you train me already? Asked Naruto. Okay. Now we can train. But, I won't be teaching you but also Hinata. She needs to learn everything there is about her new vampire powers as well, said Seraphim with the 2 vamps nodding. Understood, said the 2 as Kushina got up. Naruto, thank you for saving me. I will make myself at home. But first I need to go and take a shower, said Kushina as she held onto the coat given to her by her son. No probs, said Naruto as Kushina took her leave and left. Full control. Standing outside in the shade stood Seraphim as Naruto and Hinata stood opposite her. They had just learned what it means to hold the power of vampire. Now it was time for them to master said power. Now, vampires don't have chakra within them. It's given. Seeing that we aren't classified as being alive, we can't use it. However, a half vampire can. But that is for another time. In order to compensate with such a lose, we made an alternative to not using chakra. Blood magic, said Seraphim. I noticed this as well. I found that I can't use chakra but I'm able to use my blood as a weapon, said Naruto remembering the mission for Wave. Correct. Now, blood magic varies from one vampire to the next. Nightlord vampires have more power than the others. It's just the way things work. Bite any part of your body and we can get started, said Seraphim. Doing as she instructed, Naruto bit his wrist while Hinata went for her thumb. Once Seraphim saw the blood flow out the parts where they bit, she too bit herself being her palm and gave them a demonstration. For a nightlord, we have ridiculous powers. For defense we can create a blood ward. A shield made of our blood to defend and deflect any attacks. Thanks to the iron in the blood, the shield may look weak, but it is tougher than titanium. Bloodcursed vampires can also do this ability, said Seraphim as she commanded her blood to create a shield in her palm. Nodding their heads, Naruto and Hinata began to focus on their blood and imagined a shield in their hand. The blood merely flowed out the wound and dripped onto the floor. Nothing was happening. But soon, they saw the blood move a bit. Staying with the feeling, they carried on their focus. And soon enough, a shield burst to life in their hands. Seraphim decided to test the strength of their shields and created a blood spear in her hands. She threw both at the two and found them deflect off the shield. Though it was a flimsy shield, it was still strong. Smiling as the two cancelled the power, she moved on to the next power. Now that you know of defense, let's focus on offense. Despite a Nightlord having more offensive powers, one power is similar to Bloodcursed, Cursed and Nightlord. And that is called Blood Bolt, said Seraphim as she made her blood shift into a sharp projectile. This type of offensive blood magic allows you to fire your blood at an enemy. It has a secondary ability that is quite handy when dealing with enemies. Should an enemy be bleeding, you can fire a blood bolt at them and the blood would enter the person, thus turning them into your puppet. Don't worry, the person won't become a vampire. You have control of that when using blood bolt. Try it now, said Seraphim. Once again the two focused their minds on their blood to bring up blood bolt. Seeing nothing happening, Seraphim got their attention. Try picturing a spike. That will help you, she said with Naruto and Hinata nodding their heads. The trick worked and soon both were holding a spike made of their blood in their hands. Seraphim nodded her head and pointed at a tree. Now shoot it at the tree, said Seraphim. Taking aim, they both fired the bolt at the tree and watched as the spikes were embedded into the tree, but then broke apart with the blood flowing off the tree, leaving a hole in the tree. Excellent. Now that you know the basics in terms of using blood magic, we can move on to a few other abilities you have. One, for instance, is your strength and speed. As all vampires go, we have the power to move at high speeds not even considered human. Our strength is also enhanced due to the strength inhibitors being removed. Like such, said Seraphim grabbing the destroyed tree and literally uprooting the entire tree and holding it above her head. Cool, said Naruto with Hinata agreeing with him. This is the power of the vampire. But we also gain a few boosts of power. This only happens after we've fed off someone, said Seraphim. I noticed that, after I've fed from someone, I gain their trait for a short time, said Naruto with Seraphim snapping her fingers. Correct. As a vampire, you can gain the power of the person for a few minutes. Tell me Naruto, what have you temporarily gained? Asked Seraphim. Well, when I've fed off Ahri, my speed is more faster. I could also break the sound barrier. If I've fed off Hana, I temporarily gain the power to have enhanced smell, said Naruto. Exactly, vampires can do this to gain an edge in a fight. It's quite powerful, though it is not absolute. The only time we gain Something permanently is by having it born in us, said Seraphim with the two nodding in understandment. Now, as a vampire, we have also gained the power to travel and transform. Unfortunately, Nightlords only get the transformation ability. For my travel ability, I vanish in a flurry of leaves and come into view wherever I wish, said Seraphim. Mine is to disperse into a vortex of bats, stated Naruto. You sure have gained quite the understanding of your powers. But you, Hinata, you don't know your travel ability, said Seraphim with Hinata nodding her head. I don't know mine, said Hinata. Well, give it a shot. Try picturing where you want to go and push your blood magic outwards. That's the easy way, said Seraphim. Hinata did just that as she began to concentrate on where she wanted to go. Being on the opposite side of the garden. After a few seconds, her body soon broke up in a torrent of vines with thorns on them and then sunk into the ground, only to break through the surface at the end of the garden where they reformed Hinata. Once Hinata had been reformed, Seraphim and Naruto clapped their hands at how she did that. Well done. That is your travel ability. The travel ability to dependent on what the person grew up with. I grew up in a wide open forest-like area with my family, so that is why I travel through the form of leaves. For Hinata, you most likely grew up being outcasted by your family and so you slightly turned sour from that. That is why you have vines with thorns on them. As for you Naruto, you grew up in depression and darkness. So your one is bats. Each vampire is also connected to the type of travel they have. What I mean is that I can cause any leaves around me to become as sharp as knives. For Hinata, you can use vines in the ground to attack. But for Naruto, you can use the very bats. Quite powerful you two are, said Seraphim before closing. One last thing. When using your blood magic or any other ability, you begin to hunger. Ensure you have blood on your person before engaging in a fight. That way you won't end up becoming blood-starved and die from the sun. Got it, said Naruto. Understood, said Hinata. Adjourning the training for today, the two went in and decided to rest up for a bit. But as they rested up, Kushina sat in the one room, gazing up at the ceiling as she thought about what happened. Oh Minato, if you could see this, you'd be amazed at our son. He's gained stronger and even more courageous. He even saved me from nearly being raped by Danzo. Oh how our son has grown. He's even quite good looking. Quite ravishing, said Kushina to herself before shaking her head of such thoughts. What am I thinking? He's my son, she said only to hear her inner self talk to her. So what? Incest is a common practice. He'd understand, said Kushina's inner self. I can't do that, not to my own son, said Kushina. You always try and keep yourself pure. We haven't seen our son for nearly 14 years. And here you are thinking it's not a good idea to claim him for yourself, said inner Kushina. I won't do that to my son. Never, said Kushina. But you are thinking on the possible positions on how he could take you, said inner Kushina. No I'm not, said Kushina blushing a bit. Admit it, you're in love with your own son, said inner Kushina. Kushina didn't even respond to what inner self said and turned on the bed. She couldn't break the line set out between parent and child. She couldn't defile her son like that. Besides, he already has a mate. A lover, Ahri. Who was she to come in and demand that Naruto was to her like a bitch in heat? It just felt wrong. Misty destination. Naruto's training had proved to be rather incredible. Seraphim had even noted that his growth in understanding and controlling his powers is rather impressive. She wasn't worried about Hinata's training as Hinata had already mastered everything she ever needed in growing her powers. But for Naruto, he needed more attention as a Nightlord's powers were always harder to control and it was rather easy for a Nightlord to lose control and enter a blood-hazed rage. Naruto could be seen right now training in how to master his new strength and speed as he sparred with the one who turned him. She kept blocking and deflecting his punches as Naruto traded blow for blow with the female Nightlord hottie. But for Seraphim, she could feel the growing power the newborn Nightlord held. She had done everything to train him right and ensure the power didn't go to his head. But he was proving to have good control on his body and mind as he took his training seriously and always gave it everything. And the reason why she was able to deflect and block the onslaught of attacks was because she was fighting at max while Naruto still had more left inside him. This was the last bit of training for him to do. And she was currently trying to invoke the ancient power of the vampire deep within him. Cursed Blood Mode. A powerful boost that doubles, if not triples the vampire's power. He would occasionally show signs of him tapping into it, but it was still not there. But as she was training him, she felt that Naruto may be the only one to stop Yagura from continuing his warpath and culling all bloodline users. She couldn't have that man running around, tarnishing the name of the vampire. So this was also her reason for training Naruto. To make him strong enough to take on Yagura. I've had enough of this, growled Naruto as he jumped back as his eyes burned a dark red as his power began to gather around him. Yes, that's it, stay with that power, said Seraphim as she charged forth at the young Nightlord. Naruto too charged forth and the two clashed in the middle of the training ground. A torrent of dust being kicked up in the process as the people living in the home stared on in shock as the two vampires attacked one another. But when the dust cleared, Naruto stood there, holding Seraphim in a chokehold while his body was covered in red tribal tattoos while a red aura burned around his body. His eyes blazed as he glared at Seraphim, his hand ready to move and snap her neck at any time. "Well done, Naruto," said Seraphim as Naruto let her go. "Well done. You began 2 weeks since you began your training. And yet you hold this type of power already. Thank you," said Naruto as his new form vanished and his eyes returned to normal. "What's next?" "There is nothing more to teach you," said Seraphim. "Now I can state as to why I was training you." "Why were you training me?" "I thought it was for me to come to grips with my vampiric nature and powers," said Naruto with Seraphim holding a hand to stop him. "Naruto, that was only part of the reason. The real reason was because I want you to take down Yagura and free Kiri," said Seraphim. "Wait, so you've been training and grooming me to take down Yagura? A vampire nightlord that you turned?" inquired Naruto with Seraphim nodding her head. "Yes. When vampires battle for territory, it doesn't always end with a nightlord having to die. One could also tell the defeated challenger to leave their new territory. I lost the right to challenge. But you can take him on," replied Seraphim. "So, if I win the fight, what happens?" asked Naruto. "Kiri will belong to you. It will fall under your territory," said Seraphim with Naruto going wide-eyed with shock. "Think about it. You already have Konoha and Uzu as your territories. Why not add another to the mix? A vampire's power is also determined as to how many countries they have," said Seraphim. "I see," said Naruto thinking for a bit. On one hand, gaining Kiri would be very beneficial for him as he'd have another country under his command. He also did want to bring back the Uzumaki clan. And to do that, you may need a lot more land. But on the other, Yagura was a much older vampire than he was. His power would easily dwarf his own. As well, he was most likely trained by Seraphim herself. Coming to his conclusion, Naruto looked at the nightlord and nodded to her. "I accept," said Naruto with Seraphim smiling. "Excellent. We are to leave as soon as possible," said Seraphim with Naruto nodding as he left the training ground. As he packed away his stuff, the door to his room opened up to reveal Kushina standing there as she blushed while she looked at her son. She didn't want him to leave. But also, she didn't want to be alone without him. Getting his attention through a simple cough, she watched Naruto turn around and look to her. "Naruto, is it alright if I come with you?" she asked. "I'm not too sure if that would be wise. I am going into a fight with a nightlord. The same class of vampire that I am," said Naruto with Seraphim coming into view. "I think this would be best. Judging that she is your mother and how some of her power is most likely in you from her. It would be beneficial for you to bring her. She could be of help," said Seraphim. "In what way?" asked Naruto and Kushina. "Vampires who have inborn abilities from their parents need to feed from their parents in order to gain control over it. The first drink of blood unlocks it. The next few drinks help control it, letting you master its power," said Seraphim. "Then in that case, I don't see why you can't come," said Naruto with Kushina thanking him as she went to also pack her stuff. Once the stuff they needed was packed away, the three of them could be seen at the gate of the house as they smiled to the others. Ahri was slightly annoyed that she couldn't go. But if it was a fight against two powerful forces, she couldn't get involved. Naruto's power easily dwarfed her own now. She'd just end up getting in the way. So she promised to keep the house in order along with everyone else. Once the goodbyes were said, Naruto along with Kushina and Seraphim left Konoha and headed to Kiri where Yagura awaited them, along with the rebels that were fighting against Yagura. As they walked along the road, Naruto looked to Seraphim and asked her a question. "So, why did you turn Yagura?" asked Naruto. "I met him quite a while ago. He had been involved in a serious beatdown. When he met me, he instantly knew how powerful I was. At the time, I never knew he was. But my compassion proved otherwise and I turned him into a nightlord vampire. As I helped him learn his newfound powers, we became friends. But when he turned 19 and became the Mizukage, he betrayed the friendship we had. He knew Kiri belonged to me by birthright. But because of my foolishness on turning him into a Nightlord, I couldn't refuse his challenge. I had the upper hand in our fight, but in a momentary hesitation, he struck me. I was injured rather badly and he took Kiri right out from under me. He mocked me for cuddling up with humans and that vampires should always be on top. So I ran away in a desperate attempt. I found myself in Konoha. The rest you know, said Seraphim. Makes sense, said Naruto. Looking to the sun and the time, Kushina requested that now would be a good time to set up camp. The two agreed that letting Kushina rest would be better. Vampire could still carry on going, but seeing that they had a human traveling with them, they had to respect her wishes. Naruto made the fire while Seraphim and Kushina pitched the tents. As the two pitched the tents, Seraphim picked up something from the red-haired. The way she'd look at Naruto. How she'd always blush while he made the fire and everything else. Piecing it together, Seraphim pulled the Uzumaki aside. I see you're finding your son attractive, said Seraphim, shocking Kushina. What? Don't be absurd, said Kushina, shaking her hands in the air. You can't deny it. You're hot for your own son, said Seraphim, the smile on her face getting bigger. Even if I love him, I can't do that to him. Besides, he has others who want him, said Kushina with Seraphim shaking her head. Girl, you have no idea, said Seraphim, slinging an arm around Kushina's neck. In vampire society, Nightlords also mate with same blood. Sure, incest is wrong, but that is also how bloodlines stay pure. Regardless if you're human or vampire. I get that, but what if he rejects me? Said Kushina, looking down. Oh, don't worry about that. I'm sure he feels the same way about you, said Seraphim. How can you be so sure? Asked Kushina. Only one way to find out, said Seraphim, pushing Kushina to Naruto. Mother, what's wrong? Asked Naruto, turning to Kushina. Said Kushina, playing with her hands. You're sure have gone red all of a sudden. Are you coming down with a cold? Asked Naruto, placing a hand on her head. Kushina's heart raced as she felt the ice, but it was still warm to a degree. Kushina watched on as her son went to check her to see if she was okay. Snapping out of it, Kushina brushed the hand away as she moved her shirt to the side to show her collarbone to him. You must be hungry, she said. Why, thank you. I forgot to take some blood packs. Thanks, mother, you're a lifesaver, said Naruto as he grabbed hold of Kushina by the waist, making her give a small squeak in delight. Naruto soon bit down on Kushina's neck and savored the taste of her blood. It was probably the best blood he had ever tasted in his life. It tasted like red velvet cake. Not too overpowering and not too subtle. Just the perfect balance. Kushina soon wrapped her arms around Naruto, drawing him close as she felt him drink her blood. It was slightly painful when the fangs entered her neck. But it was more manageable. It became more easier the more he drank. Removing his fangs from her neck, Naruto gave the wound a few licks, lapping up the bits of blood that flowed out the two holes made. Once the blood stopped, Naruto gave the wound a kiss and let his mother go. Thanking her for the meal, Naruto resumed on taking care of the fire while Kushina retired into her tent as she couldn't stand to be in front of Naruto as a massive blush crept onto her face. Seraphim merely stood there as she shook her head in disapproval. You had your shot and you blew it. You're letting morals get in the way of what you want, she said before shrugging her shoulders. At least you gave Naruto your blood. Just a few more helping hands from the blood and then you're on your way to having him gain your power. Nightlord vs. Nightlord. Waking up to a new morning, Naruto and the two girls got ready to head to Kiri. They were almost there. Only a few more hours of a walk before they were in Kiri. Kushina once more offered some blood to Naruto for him to feed as a result due to her noticing his skin starting to burn. With him now fully fed, they head off. As they walked, Kushina kept having her eyes dart to the vampire in front of her. Seraphim watching this, and frankly, she was getting rather irritated. Reason why is that she wanted this red-haired woman to confess to Naruto. Yes, vampires mate with same blood in order to keep bloodlines pure, same as with humans. But one thing was different. When a vampire finds another woman attractive, they just go in without worries. But no, this woman kept having her morals get in the way of what she wanted. Just go to him, confess and then frolic in the bushes there, whispered Seraphim, making Kushina go red. I can't. He'd hate me for me coming onto him. He'd think I'm no better than some whore on the side of the road. Wanting a quick. He'd think that me being raped by Danzo was just a warm-up, whispered Kushina back to the Nightlord. Who cares? You'd be able to be with him. To hold him, love him, produce his children. So what if he thinks of you the other way? Just give into your desires. Trust me, you'll feel better, said Seraphim. So you've had say with others, said Kushina, only to be slapped by Seraphim. I may be 723 years old, but I still retain my innocence. I'm still a virgin, growled the vampire as her eyes turned red, with Naruto stopping and looking to the two fighting women. I can't do that. I will never, growled Kushina. What are you two fighting about? Asked Naruto with them looking to him. Nothing, said Kushina, blushing. We're almost there. So if you can stop this fighting, then it would be a big help, said Naruto as he continued walking. Let your desires go wild. If not, then you'll lose your shot, said Seraphim as they followed Naruto. Once they got to Kiri, they found the place was destroyed. Broken and destroyed building ran as far as the eye could see. Bodies littered the grounds as Naruto's eyes turned red as he bared his fangs. The smell of blood excited him to no extent, but he kept his urges at bay when he realized it was the smell of stale blood. Something that didn't appeal well to him. But as they moved more further down, many forces came out of nowhere, with a woman with auburn long hair that fell down to her knees along with a bang covering her one eye, looked to them. Do you stand with us? Or against us? She growled before she looked to Seraphim. Skidding down to them, she got before Seraphim and bowed. The rest of the forces did the same. Lady Seraphim, we are so galled you've returned, said the woman. May Terumi, glad to see you're still kicking, said Seraphim as the woman kneeling to her looked to Naruto. Unconsciously, she licked her lips as she found him to be rather handsome and ravishing. He was quite the man in her eyes. A strong build to him. Eyes that sparkled blue and seemed to have power to them. But when she actually took him in, she noticed his skin was as pale as the snow, and in his mouth, she could make out the faint slivers of fangs. Lady Seraphim, is this man? She trailed, with Seraphim nodding her head. Yes. Meet Naruto Uzumaki, a newly born Nightlord vampire that was a result of me accidentally turning him. The woman behind him is his mother, said Seraphim with them getting up. Please, come with us, said May as they walked off. Following the young woman, the group of three were led to a secret door that led right under Kiri. Once they were inside, they found a large open area where many people were huddled together. Coughs and sniffled were exchanged as the people tried to stave off the cold and hunger. Naruto's blood boiled as he looked to everyone in the bunker. How could things have dwindled so far to this point? Yagura had to be stopped, was all that rung in his head. We've prayed for your arrival for some time now, Lady Seraphim, said May as they stopped in a room with a map of Kiri laying before them. With you now here, we can fight back against Yagura. Hate to disappoint, started Seraphim. But I lost the right to challenge Yagura. But how do we fight against him? Asked one of the soldiers. Naruto here is the answer, said Seraphim, pointing to the young vampire. He may be a newly born Nightlord, but he already has access to his vampire mode and knows a lot about his blood magic. Are you sure he can win? Asked May, knowing full well the brutality of Yagura. I know he can win. He was trained by me, said Seraphim, nodding her head. I just pray you're right, said May, pointing to a spot on the map where the cage tower was. Here is where Yagura lives. We are planning to give one more battle. Everything we have will be thrown at him. We've managed to put down a few of the vampires he turned. But they just keep coming. We'll keep the forces busy until then, said Mei, looking over to Naruto and licking her lips. If he is successful, I'll give him some well-deserved attention. Thanks, said Naruto, looking to Mei. To him, he found her quite enjoyable. He could smell her blood from here. It smelt like flowers. Too delicious. So yummy. But that was not all he was seeing, or smelling. To him, Mei was a goddess. Her body well defined from training in battles. Her ample bust was easily E-cup. But he had to get a feel for that. That was if he got the chance to. Her long shapely legs and a rather impressive rear was nothing to the imagination. So delicious and amazing to look at. So, when do we start? Asked Kushina. Soon. In about 10 minutes. Said Mei, with them nodding their heads. Got it. I'm going to train in my powers. Said Naruto, walking out the room. With everyone leaving to their own devices, Mei followed the young vampire to where he had gone. Finding him in the one room, his eyes closed as his power flowed off him. She found such power to be incredible. On par as Yagura's own. Sneaking into the room, she stood before him, leaning down and having her breasts in his face, she coughed to get his attention. When Naruto opened his eyes, he shot back from the fright while Mei giggled from the action she got. Mei, what are you doing? Asked Naruto as Mei sauntered over to the vampire. Can't you tell? She purred when she trapped him in the corner. No, I can't, said Naruto, playing the dumb card only to have Mei trail her fingers across his chest. Your skin is as pale as the snow. You're as cold as ice, she trailed, leaning forward to have her mouth close to his ear. Quote. I think I can help you heat up. If I wouldn't know any better, I'd say you're flirting with me, said Naruto, with Mei placing a finger on her lips, making her shoot through the roof. What makes you say that? She asked as she grabbed his hand and placed it on her one breast. I want to give you something to remember me by. With that said, Naruto gave the large melon in his hands a squeeze, earning a low moan from her lips as Mei sported a slight blush. As he squeezed and played with her chest, Mei's hand moved down to his pants where she began to stroke him. She purred, licking her lips. Someone is rather hard. But just before they could continue, an alarm sounded, with Mei growling at how her fun was ruined. Locking eyes with Naruto, she placed a finger on his lips as she smiled to him. We'll pick this up later, big boy, she purred as she gave him a peck on the lips and left. Naruto soon walked out the room and headed up to the surface where the forces who rebelled against Yagura stood, where they saw Yagura standing there in the middle while his army of vampires stood behind him. I hear there is a new vampire in my village. Where is he? Demanded Yagura, with Naruto standing up and walking to the man. I am he, said Naruto, stopping before Yagura. So you're the new Nightlord vampire. Much like me, said Yagura, smiling to Naruto. Why not join me? Why should I? Barked Naruto. We are the superior beings. The ones at the top of the food chain. We are gods among mortals. They were created for one purpose. And one purpose only. To serve our needs. We vampires are the apex predators, said Yagura, rather like. I don't believe in your ideals. Humans have as much right to live on this rock as we do. Without them, we can't exist. We may be more stronger in terms of power. But in the end, we are the same as them, retorted Naruto, with Yagura shaking his head. Humans don't deserve to live. They are to serve at our feet. Serve our needs, growled Yagura, with him grinding his teeth together. My patience grows thin, boy. Make your choice. Join me, or die by my hand, growled Yagura. I'd rather send you to hell, spat Naruto, only to be hit in the face by a punch from Yagura. Naruto flew so fast as he sailed over the heads of everyone and into the face of a building. Slamming into it, everyone looked to the angry vampire as he breathed harshly while glaring to where Naruto landed. But soon, the sky darkened and a powerful force pushed everyone down while the rocks near the building Naruto crashed into began to shake on the ground. A powerful blast of energy exploded everywhere while an unholy roar pierced the air. Naruto soon came out the hole made and floated there. Everyone gasped at what they were seeing. It was as if the devil himself decided to come out and play as Naruto flew to Yagura and slammed him into the ground while slashing and clawing at the man's face. Yagura took each blow as he smiled to Naruto. That's it. Let your power consume you. Turn into a monster like me, he said as Naruto roared as he flew Yagura into a building. But Yagura never connected to the building as wings burst out his back with him floating in air. Shaking his head, he pointed to Naruto. I know you're holding back. Fight more. Show me your power, he cried as Naruto surged to him and was soon flung into another building. Yagura floated to where Naruto was and folded his arms as he looked on to Naruto who was getting out the rubble. Are you sure you're a Nightlord? He asked. You sure aren't acting like it. Naruto merely growled as he surged forth again and slammed Yagura into the ground where he picked up with slashing and cutting him. Blood flowed everywhere while Yagura merely sighed as he kicked Naruto off him only for him to grab Naruto by the hair and slam him into the ground. You're not even at my level. You're so weak it is not even funny. You give vampires a bad name, said Yagura giving Naruto virus blows. Deciding enough was enough, Yagura brought his fangs to Naruto's neck. Guess I'll take your power for myself, said Yagura as his fangs grew closer to Naruto's neck. Don't do it, cried Kushina only for Yagura to look at Kushina. Licking his lips as he took her in, he turned to Naruto. Very impressive. Maybe when we're done here, I'll make her my cumdump. Who knows, she may please me and make me wanna make her my person. He cackled only for Naruto to grab Yagura by the neck. Don't touch her, growled Naruto as he lifted Yagura with him now standing upright. She's Kushina Uzumaki, the Red Death. She do well as my pet, said Yagura only for Naruto to tighten his grip around his neck. You will not touch her. She belongs to me, growled Naruto as he grabbed Yagura's head and began to pull. What's he doing? Asked Kushina with Seraphim widening her eyes. He's going to end it. Pull the head off a vampire and there you have an instant win, replied Seraphim. And exactly with what she said, Naruto ripped Yagura's head clean off with him sinking his teeth in and drinking the blood that flowed out the open wound. Throwing Yagura's head to the opposing forces, Naruto continued to feed. Once all the blood had been drained, Naruto roared to the heavens as he reverted back to normal. His body steaming as he shrank to be his regular size again. Looking to the forces that opposed the rebels, they watched as they bowed to Naruto. Lord Naruto, what do you wish of us? They asked. What just happened? Asked Mei walking over to Naruto. Vampires follow the rules set out by the one who turned them. The pride of a vampire hinges on every battle. When Yagura was killed by Naruto, they recognized him as their new master, said Seraphim. Meaning they won't betray Kiri? Asked Kushina slightly blushing from what Naruto said about her. They'd dare not. They'd rather die than go against their master's wishes, said Seraphim. You are to rebuild Kiri to its former glory. While I am away, you are to assist Mei Terumi, your new Mizukage, said Naruto with everyone going wide-eyed. What? But you're the new master of these vampires, said Mei with Naruto looking to her. I have other things to attend to. You will be the one to give orders in my stead, said Naruto with Mei thanking him. Of course. I'll try my best, said Mei understanding. If I hear that one of you drank blood without the permission of Mei or the one whom you drank blood from, you'll be in huge trouble. And I'll send you to hell myself, said Naruto with the vampires nodding to him. By your orders, they said. Turning to Kushina and Seraphim, Naruto nodded to them as they stood beside him. Should we head back? Asked Seraphim. I believe that is in order, said Kushina. We'll see you soon, Mei, said Naruto only for Mei to kiss him on the lips. Kushina stood wide-eyed while she watched the scene before her. The scene of the one she was crushing on, making out with Mei who was making the kiss more passionate by the second with the way she was clutching to him. After a few minutes, Mei broke the kiss with a small giggle as she winked to Naruto. See you soon, big boy, she purred with them walking off, back to Konoha. Next stage. Once they arrived back in Konoha, Naruto was greeted by a rather happy group of women. Ahri, Hana and Hinata all welcomed him back through kisses and hugs, while Ahri more went for the direct approach and slipped her hand into his pants. She was unfortunately stopped by both Hana and Hinata, who told her that they'd do that later. Naruto trained and honed his mind to harness this new power. Seeing that he killed Yagura in record time, he needed to understand more of his own power and try and gain a feel for it. Getting a snack from Ahri and Hana, he got down to training while Kushina sat on a chair, watching her son train in using his blood magic. She never understood the concept as to why Naruto had to draw blood to invoke his power. But then again, she understood it at the same time as Naruto needed to do it to use his power. But as she watched on, Ahri plopped onto a chair next to her and stared at her former jailer as Kushina watched her son. Ahri soon smiled as she leaned into Kushina. "You love him, don't you?" said Ahri, only to have Kushina blush. "I do. But as a mother," said Kushina, denying her growing feelings, only to have Ahri shoot out her seat and grab Kushina's breets. Kushina gasped in surprise as she felt the demoness play with her breets. A blush growing on her face as Ahri kneaded and squeezed them. "Don't deny it. You love him more than a mother," said Ahri as she licked Kushina's neck. I love him as a mother," said Kushina, trying to not succumb to the pleasure. "I will not stop until you confess. You love him more than a mother," said Ahri, only for Kushina to start bucking against her. "It's wrong. I can't do that to my own son. He'd think I'm just another whore, wanting to be hard by another man. He'd think that saving me from Danzo was a waste of time, seeing that I feel that way. Besides, he has you as well as other potential lovers. He'd never look at me in that light," said Kushina, only for Ahri to let go. Her face turning cold as she stared intently at her former jailer. "You really think my mate will see that about you?" hissed Ahri. Kushina merely looked down as she nodded her head, only to be slapped relatively hard across the cheek that drew blood from the hit, making Naruto's and Hinata's nose go wild from the smell of fresh blood. Seraphim was out currently, playing with yet another man and coaxing him into thinking he'd get to bang the hot vampire, only to be turned into her next meal. He'd never. Naruto would never see that about you. In fact, he loves everyone equally. He cares for those he considers to be friends and family. How do you think Zabuza and Haku were able to be saved? Naruto saved them. So get it through that thick skull of yours. He doesn't feel that way. He'd love to be with you. I'm sure of it. Make your peace with it. And love him. Or get out our way," growled Ahri, walking away. Naruto merely walked over to Kushina and scraped some of the blood from her bleeding cheek, giving his blood-coated finger a lick, savoring the warm sensation the blood gave him, looking to her as she looked away while a shade of red dusted her cheeks. "What's wrong?" asked Naruto. "I have something to tell you," said Kushina as she sat down, with Naruto doing the same, giving into what Ahri said. "Okay. What is it?" asked Naruto. Kushina merely turned her head as she stared deeply into Naruto's eyes. Despite the red outline in his crystal blue orbs, she found it to be rather exotic. Taking hold of his ice-cold hands, she gazed intently at him. "I know this is sudden. And I know you may think of me in a bad light," said Kushina as she grew more red in the face. "But, ever since you saved me from Danzo, I couldn't help but find you attractive." "I see," was all Naruto said as he looked at Kushina with a neutral expression. "Even if it was for a short time, I couldn't help but find myself drawn to you. I understand that with vampires you live long lives and drain blood. But I didn't care with that. I found you to be the man I want. The man I need," said Kushina as a lone tear fell from her eye. "So, what are you telling me?" asked Naruto. His answer was in the form of a kiss on the lips. His eyes widened at the sudden advance, but he soon melted into the kiss as he kissed her back. Kushina felt like her body was on fire as she felt her son kiss her back. But she soon broke the kiss when Naruto's tongue brushed against her lips. Looking intently as she covered her mouth, she began to look in random directions as Naruto merely looked to her. "I'm sorry about that. I didn't mean to do that. trailed Kushina as Naruto placed a finger on her lips. Relax. As a matter of fact, I can't see you as my mother, said Naruto only for Kushina to look down. But had her face pulled up to look at Naruto. But that doesn't mean we can't be friends. And judging from that advance, you want to be more than friends. I do. I really do, said Kushina, letting it all out and slamming her lips onto Naruto's, the two of them kissing feverishly as they felt each other's bodies. But as they kissed one another, Hana, Ahri and Hinata looked at the scene before them. A smile on each of their faces as they watched mother and son make out. Took her long enough, said Hinata, making the two look at her. Ha ha, Hana and Ahri said together. Incest is a common practice. How do you think my clan stayed pure? Asked Hinata with them shrugging their shoulders. Point taken, said Hana as Ahri walked away, smiling at her handiwork. Took you long enough, she said, walking up the stairs into her room. Breaking the kiss once more when breathing became necessary, Kushina and Naruto looked to each other as a blush crept onto their faces. Naruto was about to dive in for another kiss but was stopped when Kushina placed a finger on his lips. Later, she purred as she got up and walked off. Deciding to get back to training, Naruto picked up where he left off in his training. But as he trained, his mind kept going back to the recent kiss he had with Kushina. He knew that what Danzo did to her was beyond saving grace. But he vowed to never do that to her. Or any woman for that matter. By the time the afternoon came around, Naruto got into a shower and cleaned himself from the sweat he built up. Once he was cleaned and dried, he got onto his bed and stared at the ceiling. But looked to the door when it creaked open. His jaw hit the floor when he saw who it was. Kushina merely closed the door as she stood there in nothing but a red lacy bra and matching panties. The bra barely holding her DD cup breasts while her long shapely legs were on display for Naruto to see. Her smooth and toned stomach was dotted with a few abs here and there while her long flowing red hair emphasized her beauty. Blushing as she walked over to the bed, she climbed onto it. The bed creaking from the additional weight as she sat on top of her son. Kushina, you look, shish, said Kushina, placing a hand on his lips. Don't ruin it. Kushina made her way down and planted a rather passionate and long kiss on Naruto's lips. Their tongues intertwining with one another as they made out on the bed. Both moaning in pleasure and bliss. Kushina soon took one of Naruto's hands and placed it on her one breast. Giving the soft piece of flesh a squeeze, Naruto heard Kushina moan into the kiss as they made out. Once more parting when breathing was needed. Kushina looked onto the son she birthed. Gone was the bonds of mother and son when she was taken from him. Gone was the morals and boundaries when she gave into her desires and made out with her son. All that remained was a primal lust for each other. And the ever-increasing pleasure as Naruto played with her breasts. Kushina threw her head back as a low moan escaped her lips as Naruto's other hand went to her free breast. After a few minutes, Kushina grabbed his hands and pulled them off her chest. Wanna see them? Asked Kushina with a sultry smile. I do, said Naruto without hesitation. Smiling while she licked her lips as she felt how hard he was, Kushina grabbed the clasp holding her bra together and undid it. Letting it fall off, she threw it to the side as she placed her hands behind her head. Giving her son a rather pleasing pose. You like it? She asked only to gasp in pleasure as Naruto surged up and took one of her breasts into her mouth and began to suck and lick the. Throwing her arms around his neck and head as she began to grind herself on his body, Kushina's breathing became irregular as she felt her son suck and lick her one breast while he played with the other. Ah, that feels good, said Kushina. But after a few minutes, Kushina pushed Naruto off and got into the classic 69 position. Moving her panties out the way, she pulled down his boxers as she gasped in surprise at how equipped he was. He was at least 8 inches long and 1.5 inches wide. Wow, so big, she purred as she gave the head a lick. Naruto merely closed one eye as a groan of pleasure escaped his lips. Deciding to return the favor, Naruto dove into her pussy and began eating her out. his fangs brushing against her lower lips and occasionally clipping them, drawing a bit of blood by mistake. But this didn't stop the feeling of pure ecstasy as Kushina moaned in pleasure as she felt both the fangs and his tongue work her wet pussy. She too gave back the feeling and took his cock into her mouth. Only being able to fit 5 inches in, she began to bob her head back and forth while stroking what she couldn't fit in her mouth. Both Uzumakis pleasured one another. Kushina tasting the pre-cum that flowed out her son's cock while Naruto found her and began to play with it. Kushina howled in pleasure onto his face, his cock buried in her mouth as she came into Naruto's waiting mouth. Savoring her taste, Naruto went back to work. He began to feel a familiar pressure building up in his balls. This feeling was the same one he had when he mated with Ahri. Using his own motions, Naruto thrusted into Kushina's mouth, who stopped her actions when Naruto began to thrust, allowing him to hit her gag reflex every time he thrusted. "I'm coming," said Naruto as he fired his load into Kushina's hungry mouth. Kushina's eyes rolled into the back of her head as she swallowed it all, taking in the large quantity of cum that flooded her mouth. After a full minute of coming, Kushina pulled his cock out her mouth with a rope hitting her face. Licking it off, she got off Naruto's face and turned to him. "Bigger than your father and taste just as good. You're truly blessed with the Uzumaki genes," she purred as she grabbed a hold of his cock and jacked him off a bit. Once he was hard again, Kushina lifted herself up and positioned her waiting pussy over his CCK, biting her lip as she felt it push past where Minato was, even further than where Danzo violated her. Once fully sheathed inside her, Kushina managed to fit all 8 inches inside her. It was just barely brushing her cervix as she came from the feeling of being filled. It was like she found a match to her lock, even if it was with her own son. "You're inside. You're finally inside me. How does it feel?" asked Kushina as she trembled from the feeling. "So tight. It feels so good. Like you were made for me," said Naruto as Kushina placed her hands on his chest. "Give me your love," she purred as she began to rise up and fall. Both Uzumakis moaned in pleasure as the two each other. Kushina felt like a new